Good afternoon, Abbotsford residents. I'm Mr. Pelican. I'm running here for your mayor of Abbotsford. And not only to financially audit and go after Cooper's Farm and the jobs that were lobbied with Henry controlling the majority of council, I'm also going after to transformate the Abbotsford Police into the RCMP. Why? Because the high ring of organized crime that the Abbotsford Police were doing for political politicians, Ed Fast and Mike DeYoung. Today I want to show you something. I want to take you back a little bit. This takes you back. Remember the chicken incident manure on the former mayor? I believe that was Bruce Bamman. Bruce Bamman owned the responsibility, came out and made a press conference, and a lot of people got fired because they were doing it behind his back, but he owned up to it. The Abbotsford Police, a few days ago, tried to shit-kick the homeless right after Valentine's, and then 453 came and laid a stripping into me, and he knows I'm running for mayor. He knows that I know Abbotsford Police have abused their time cards and ripped off taxpayers in thousands of dollars. They just figured that this would never ricochet back on the Abbotsford Police because police never get questioned. They get to beat the community down. When Darren Brown opened the doors to the floodgates here in Abbotsford, there was no going back. He outlined how Ed Fast, the MP of the Conservatives, and the MLA Michael DeJong were tied to Henry and would clean everything. And how Henry sat on the top of the board of the Abbotsford Police where his uncle Irwin was, Sandy Blue, Mark Warkentine, these were all Henry's friends, and above all, the Abbotsford newspaper, former pro-editor Rick Rakes, and then Ken and Vicky Hopes. Project Takedown was commenced here in Abbotsford against the elite establishment of Abbotsford elite politicians and the Abbotsford Police, the task force officers, with Rain Mogill to block to help Henry win the city so Henry's dreams and Henry's plans could come forward. But before I go any further, I want to show you something here. Yesterday, it's all over social media. Yesterday, they decided to do this. On Project Takedown, the city staff phoned me, and they were already taking pictures out. Ross Siemens had fled from the city. Well, he called in the work crew. The work crew went up there, and they pretend that they were servicing the gardens with bulk mulch and chicken manure right in front of the homeless. They called the Abbotsford Police on our time cards to say, we need to move them, we're servicing the gardens, and we're in the middle of the winter, there's still snow on the ground everywhere. These were the gardens that were first to be serviced, not at the front of the city, what's supposed to make it look nicer here in the library, but right where the homeless were. Ross fled. He knew them cedar bulk marches and that cedar would affect their eyes and everything else. But this time Ross figured if we do it with the Abbotsford Police, nobody would question it. It was a beat down on the homeless. Under Project Takedown, the Abbotsford city workers walked out and took pictures and said, so when the former mayor, Bruce Bamman, was tagged with it, Vicky Hopes went all over him and scandaled him with Henry. When Henry's pet, Ross Siemens, is tagged with it, he doesn't do a press conference or come out. He gets in his pickup truck and he fled. Now you can have a look at that. That's also on Facebook and it's creeping up everywhere. But this time, it was the Abbotsford Police were involved. A democracy allows everybody to run in the election. So let me tell you what took place under Project Takedown. Henry was so adamant with his friends in the establishment of honing the city for the development jobs that he promised and he was bringing to his friends, even Cooper's Farm. No one sneaks in to change a schedule at night on Sunday, especially religious-going Henry with his wife, to change the schedule and blame somebody else unless there's something that you're going to reward. No one breaks into a building unless you're trying to steal something. Henry was going to steal Cooper's Farm from behind everybody with Polygon. In a couple of days, I'm going to show you what's taking place with the head of Polygon here in Abbotsford and how Henry lobbied that. So what took place was Henry could not stand that Manji Soy would beat Ross because Ross was going to be in a scandal, and Henry's hard work then would go down the tubes. Manji Soy and all the other mayors were running, and they had advertising in this newspaper, if you could see it. This was given to me by the RCMP commander when he searched and said, "Where are you?" Henry knew that I, in the debates, would break down Ross Siemens and pull him to the ground. Henry used his political protection and his money, and he used the Abbotsford police. When I went over to the RCMP, here's was the wisdom and knowledge of the RCMP. They're what? They're playing in what democracy in an election? The Abbotsford Police Task Force, I saw them ring Mogil. I saw Henry use the electoral office to go after Bruce Bamman's signs and Mogil signs when he was running, so I knew it was a foregone conclusion that if Henry didn't suspect me in the political ring and I came up from the ground up, he would order his friends to do it 1,000,000 times more because he needed to own the city through Ross Siemens. You can see that. No other mayor has ever came to help a mayor, but Henry's everywhere where Ross is. You can see Henry helping through Nancy freezing and everything else. And then you can see why Dave Lowens is tweeting out that Ross is such a good patriot holding the flag, but in other returns, here he is doing 10 times worse to the homeless with the chicken manure. Not only yesterday with the chicken manure and the bulk march that's mixed, the high acid level, the irritation in the eyes, all the rocks on Gladys on your time dollars. When I saw the fraud of Abbotsford police that were misbehaving like children, and any time that they were questioned, because it was no longer in front of the city auditorium, they used the police uniform, and then threats, and then came out after residents. It was escalating that there was no more control of it. Henry was building an establishment like Adolf Hitler to run in a dictatorship. The Abbotsford policemen and women that were working in there actually convinced their mentally retarded selves that they were doing good for this community. Even the RCMP and the A.P.D looked at it and said, "What the hell are these nutcases doing?" The upper management, rather than right away. So let me explain something in layman's terms to you. When an officer gets caught selling drugs, and you walk into the A.P.D in Vancouver and say, "I found one of your officers, he's selling drugs." Right now, the upper management and the Safety Standards Act get involved to find that officer, because now he's doing something behind the company and he's involved in organized crime. When these officers at the task force and were threatening and blocking during the election and running interference, that's why the RCMP said, "We want you to accept them fines, Mr. Pelican, the drinking, driving, reckless driving, and everything they're doing." The upper management did not get involved. Why? Let me explain why. Mike Sir was covering for Henry Brown, his boss, and the elite politicians. The private police were being owned to run interference to load elections so they could lift job sites and threaten residents. The police were no longer policing. I have to make it clear, as I run these podcasts and I saw the heinous acts, the witnesses were too many of them. Too many dignitaries, and as I stated yesterday, even people from the BC Conservatives witnessed the Abbotsford police threatening. The uniform and the name of the police were going to protect them. They cannot be trusted to be out on the street at night. In my opinion, I know they're framing people. The upper management went down and shut their doors and figured this was the way. You can see Watts running scared as he tries to protect the company to keep the guys employed. This ain't a service for Abbotsford or against gangs, because I can tell you what, right now, when the judge asks all these officers that are upstairs, "So you went after Mr. Pelican because there was gangs up at his house?" There's no gangs up at Mr. Pelican's house. That I'll make you clear. Who was up at my house was politicians. I made that clear. BC Conservative leader John Rustad and many other politicians were at my house. But the task force decided to spend taxpayers' money and their little brats upstairs with their crying to other detachments and to Victoria, that they were going to paint a picture to put the task force and officers in front of me, making it look, we can do anything we want on taxpayers' dollars, but I'll make it clear, there was no gangs up at Mr. Pelican's houses. Then the Abbotsford police decided to go to Mr. Pelican's job sites and ring him, and there's no gangs at Mr. Pelican's house. When the RCMP said switch it back, call out Michael de Jong's party on Bell Road with the illegal gathering at the height of the coronavirus and them smoking drugs and dope in there and everything else, the Abbotsford police didn't raid it, proving 100% they were protecting the two elite politicians. Now they distanced themselves, and you could see it. They're no longer taking pictures. There hasn't been a picture of the mayor here to prop the new building that they stalled for $71 million. Ed Fast hasn't been here, and their fearless leader that was going to took them down a rabbit hole and took them down the drain, Henry Braun. So the Abbotsford police have to be blocked from working co in hands with other police departments like Langley and Chilliwack in Mission, because I believe that they're getting the information when the raids are coming in on gangs and they're beating the other police there to get the stash, and then they're taking it and sharing it out. When you're in this kind of organized crime, you steal everything. There's too many witnesses that witnessed the abuse attack, but the uniform was protecting it, and it wasn't that. It was elite politicians that were cleaning. The task force has to and must be removed. Abbotsford police cannot exist. When Abbotsford police knew that it wasn't going away, they did everything to interfere in the courts that was before the courts on Henry being damaged and negligently harming homeowners and seniors for greed to move the bus terminal off of Riverside down on the bottom by Lou's Bar and Grill, which he was a part of. He knew that he strapped city officials and everybody from investigating because it was him. When Henry Brown was in this jam, Henry Brown and the rich elite people that he was with convinced the Abbotsford police to follow in their shoes. The Abbotsford police did it. Now they're trying to distance themselves and clean it. They have to be gone. The Abbotsford police then took the law in their own hands. They knew it wasn't going to end because they were in trouble. So what they figured they were going to do, because they had it cleaned by Vicky Hopes and Ken, what they figured they were going to do was start tagging in Mr. Pelican and Abbotsford homeowners. When the Abbotsford police saw me doing a podcast, the officer smashed my phone that my son worked very hard to buy for Father's Day for me. There was no apology. The little prick went in there and hid, and his upper management was going to clean it because look at the uniform. We're police. Then he smashed the camera that was donated to me in my mayor election by Abbotsford people that raised money to pay it out of their own pockets so I could have a professional camera, and they smashed that in my stand. Then the officer made accusations to jail me and threaten me and put me to the boots, and he was going to put me in the cells. Ladies and gentlemen, if he did that in the broad daylight to me as a politician, they've been doing it to the general community that's weak and can't stand up. Watts then knew his officer was in trouble. Instead of Watts breaking the phone and coming and seeing me, he didn't. But they could use their database and their police force to come and find my address and my truck. The Abbotsford police just didn't stop there. You saw the heinous attack the other day by 453 running his mouth off in this kind of situation. Abbotsford has been frauded out of millions and millions of dollars by Henry Brown and job sites. Henry's running to keep Ross in power to hold it. Henry's son leaked how Ed Fast and Mike de Jong were involved. That is why I'm adamant that the RCMP have to come in. Elite politicians were at my house, not gangs, not gangs. The Abbotsford police, men and women that worked upstairs, believed that we're undercover officers, so we can't be dismissed because we're important to this community on gangs. We're investigators out at night. We can't be. They have to be removed from our streets of Abbotsford, running around in the cop cars. Abbotsford police now sit on your tax dollars, and you watch the chief. Let me tell you what I'll tell you what he's going to do. He's going to show a show of strength and tell Abbotsford police, no matter what you do, just start firing up your sirens here and there, get out in the community, raising your tax dollars and frauding from you. $71 million was frauded. Yesterday, Unitex superintendent set up a Margaret Stenister. He said, I can't wait to get my ass in this company out of here. He said the police building was just a complete disaster and that it didn't go to tendering. Yesterday, the superintendent made it clear that they're looking at all the jobs in Burnaby and everywhere, and if this scandal gets out, that they're going to lose the government contracts for Unitec and everywhere else. But that's not half as bad as what I'm going to show you Polygon was doing. These weren't police officers. These officers, instead of investigating and doing what they wanted to run in an election. I want to make sure that they have a chance now to put their name forward, like Watts, Keelan Olenoff, Gertie Purdy, Sleemans, and all these people have a chance to come forward and run in these elections, municipally, federal, and provincially, because they didn't want to do policing. They have to be investigated. They have to be shut down. They violated Abbotsford taxpayers. They were on a joyride like no other, and then they used, every time they were in trouble, they started using their uniform. Henry gave them a perfect shield. He held controlled and brought the Abbotsford newspaper online to control all the scandals so that other law enforcement couldn't see. It's up to the courts to make the decision. When Mike Sir knew that I was creeping out the back doors and into politicians like Pierre Poilievre, Maxime Bernier, and the list just went on, Mike Sir left his team and fled to Surrey. So let me tell you what's going to come. I bet you 90% of the elite officers that work the task force in drugs up here are now probably looking to integrate into Surrey to set up their illegal operation with Mike Sir there. They can't be traced in policing. Mr. Pelican should have never had to gone through this with his family and his neighbors in our community. The Abbotsford Police have to be dismantled. So to other law enforcements like Langley, Mission, and Surrey, you have to be very careful of leaking and cross-referencing to do any business here in Abbotsford, because they're beating you to the punch and they're taking it. When they're gone this far, they're already into debt. When Olenoff said there was millions of dollars in Henry's safe, his own staff sergeant searched. When Olenoff said he went to Henry's house for break-ins, there was never no break-ins. It would have been all over the news the mayor was broken into. Olenoff was lying. I believe Olenoff was seizing cash and other things on the streets and taking it to Henry's house, and they were dispersing it, because nobody should say how much money is in somebody's safe and put them in harm's way. Henry Brown decided to fraud Abbotsford taxpayers. Henry Brown got in his Lexus car when he couldn't get the Abbotsford police to stop something, and then decided to take the law in his own hands. He came in his Lexus car and he came straight at me at a protest. He hit and ran me, and then he fled from the scene, putting me in the hospital where months I was limping around. Instead of Abbotsford police doing what they're supposed to be under law enforcement, they went down for the head of the mob boss and figured that Henry knew enough politicians through the back door they could clean the company. These boys are out for revenge. They have to be gone. The police uniform does not protect you. They've crossed the law far too far. They believe that. They're running around in Abbotsford with attitudes that is unbelievable. Every given time they see me and the Abbotsford homeowners, they come bagging out, believing under the uniform they have to be removed. This is where the courts need to get involved now, and we need the RCMP hauled into Abbotsford. But Henry Brown also dumped his Lexus car, and he went and got a Cadillac. Henry Brown left the scene of the accident and didn't give shit about my life. Henry Brown knew he needed to load Ross Siemens. When I was going to stand up what Henry Brown and Ross Siemens did, Henry Brown had to go all in with his boys, and he asked the Abbotsford Task Force to do what they did to Mogel, to own this little town, Abbotsford, BC. They have to, ladies and gentlemen, and they got to be, for Abbotsford's safety, to be removed. When officers are going to be dying here in Abbotsford because they've been targeted because they've done this to people, they're going to beg on the newspaper and everywhere else, my officer died in the line of duty. All these people that witnessed it will know who else did you push and didn't have the brakes, like Mr. Pelican and Abbotsford homeowners, and they decided to take the law in their hands. It was the RCMP and Mission men and women, tremendous human beings, said Mr. Pelican. You have these doors anytime, and you know that. If you take the law in your own hand and you stand in front of Henry's house or Ross's house or anybody else's house, and you decide to take it upon you, we do no longer have this service to help you. Abbotsford residents and Mr. Pelican promised that to the RCMP, and the RCMP backed Abbotsford residents and Mr. Pelican. The Abbotsford police men and women are going to do everything they can to run locations and ads, and now you know why Henry Brown went to David Eby and got hired. He figured if I get into David Eby's office with Bob Rich and Mike Sir, now I can clean the company from the back door. So let me tell you what he probably said to David Eby. Eby, if you don't help and stand down to keep the private police and hold the RCMP out, Cooper's Farm's going to go under investigations. All the stuff of Rom Funk, all the jobs that I have done and everything I was fast tracking at Fast House and everything. This chicken coop is pretty big, this rabbit hole. So there's only one thing left now for Henry Brown and Abbotsford establishment to do before the seizures comes, because Mogel said where there was smoke, there was fire, is to set the city of Abbotsford on fire and burn all the documents that control the fast tracking and the backroom meetings. Let me make this clear. Les Barkman ran for our city council. He never targeted Mr. Pelican or took my signs down. Patricia Dreesen ran for city council. She never made allegations. Abbotsford First said I grabbed Sandy Blue on the whipper whapper to help Ross Siemens. The acts of Dave Sidhu at UFV with his dad to block. Dave Lowen's climbing on private property to take my signs. The RCMP made it clear when I went belly aching that they were hauling my signs to keep me strapped and buy more, to put them in front of eyewitnesses and cameras, that Gabriel was using his uniform for Henry, just like the Abbotsford police did, to take your signs to load Ross Siemens. Ross Siemens. Bruce Banman owned the Prodigy to the homeless, and you fled from it. I told you a long time ago when Henry's, Ross Siemens' aunt, and old Bernie Siemens told me Ross never wanted to be run for mayor. He was being pushed. Of course, he dumped his gas station in Mission and Henry was blackjacking. His dad, Ross's dad, sat with me. He's the only one in Abbotsford that had cojones and said, Mr. Pelican, do me a great favor. Because he knew it now it was coming off the rails. Don't come against my granddaughters and my daughter-in-law. And this should have been settled by man. This ain't man. These were men that were pieces of shit of Abbotsford, and they figured this company and how much we can plead, and under the police name we could do it. The top upper management did not own this problem, and they covered this problem because they were laying in bed with Henry Braun. And this is what they did. They didn't keep a professional distance. So now they're going to distance themselves to try to clean the company. And Watts is probably on his phone just bent over to David Eby as this thing gets worse. Tomorrow, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to show you what the Chamber of Commerce is doing with Polygon. I'm live here, Abbotsford, British Columbia.